Thomas Yellow Eyes with Night Train Pickleball, and today we're bringing you another Whiteboard Wednesday. Today we're talking about the transition zone or no man's land. Now, this is one that has been talked about a lot, I feel like, and been covered by some playing pros, some non-playing pros, some teaching pros, and there's a lot of different opinions on it. But today I'm going to teach you the way that I teach it weekly to my students, both in the lessons and in the clinics. And again, I teach beginners and some low-level intermediate players, and and sometimes I'll get into the higher level, but for the most part, mine is the beginners and low-level intermediate players working on moving their way up. Right. So today we're going to talk about basically this zone between the baseline and the no volley zone. So if you're here, if you're this team here, I would consider you at the baseline, and if you're up here, up against this no volley zone line or the kitchen line, I consider you playing the short game, right? So anything that's between this baseline and in here, I would consider, so somewhere in here, I would consider the either the transition zone or the no man's land. Now let's talk about the differences. Why would I call it one? When would I call it one, and when would I call it the other? Okay, it's important. So this is an interesting area of the game because when we're teaching players each week, when I'm teaching players each week, I have them fit into one or two categories, and honestly, most of them fit in the no man's land more than they fit in the transition zone. But let's talk about what the two differences are. So the transition zone is the players are working your way from the baseline to the no volley zone. So they're actually working their way from point A to point B, right? So this would be considered, the baseline would be considered point A, and the no volley zone would be considered point B. So they're actually working their way through the transition zone and we call it the transition zone because they're actually trying to transition from point A to point B, get to the no volley zone, and try to get the advantage of being there, right? So that's when we would consider it the transition zone. And this is something that a lot of players don't get right away, and a few players do, but it's a lot of players have to work on doing that, okay? So that is the transition zone. Now, when is it considered no man's land? I get a lot of players who will come in and they'll make it up to a certain point and then they stop. And then they want to play the game from this area. And that at that point is called no man's land. What do I mean by that? It means so let's talk about a few reasons why players share with me why they want to play there. First of all, if this team here are bangers or they like to hit the ball hard, a lot of players will back up because of self-preservation. They want the most distance between this player and this player to be able to react to the ball when it's hit hard. Understandably, I can understand it, especially at the beginner level, right? Another reason why players talk about playing from here is they feel like they have better control, like they can better control the game. And that probably at the beginning seems like it makes some sense, and even probably at the very beginner level, this will work against other beginner players, okay? But just understand, as you move up in skill level, the shots get better. So then what we're talking about when we talk about the no man's land is we get stuck, or we choose to play in the space between the baseline and the no volley zone. So that's what we consider the no man's land. When you're actually not trying to transition from point A to point B, you choose to play somewhere in between that. There's a T in there somewhere. In between, when you're choosing to play in between A and B, we consider that no man's land, okay? So again, at the beginner level, that works really great. But as you start playing better players, you have to understand that the distance now that you've created between the net and you is huge. So if that player drops the ball short, now you find yourself sprinting up, trying to sprint up and then hit a ball that is not attackable, which becomes significantly harder. But probably even more important is look at all of this space that you're giving these players to hit the ball that you now have to cover. So you have to now cover a ball that's hit at an angle and is coming out here. So now you're coming all the way off the court to have to hit that ball, which now leaves this player to have to cover all of that. Or you hit one here and you drag this player off, and hit this one, you drag that player off. Now you're making your life harder. So even though at some point it feels like self-preservation to want to play from the no man's land, it actually makes sense to eventually get yourself here, cut off the amount of court that can be that you have to cover, which also cuts off the angles and makes it easier to cover the court. Okay, yes, you're going to play players who hit the ball hard. Yes, it's going to feel scary, but that's part of the if you want to grow your game, that's some skills that you start learning, right? And man, I could get into that, and we could talk about that every week. How to start neutralizing players that are bangers, right? Or hit the ball hard. I used to be that guy. I used to hit the ball really hard until I started playing against players who could, no matter how hard I hit the ball, they could handle it. And then that's when you start learning you need to do something different, right? So a lot of these players who play in the no man's land here, they play a game of survival. They're just trying to keep the ball alive. And to some degree, there is some truth to that you're just trying to get this team to hit one more ball. But once this team gets smarter and starts hitting balls that are harder to get back, or they actually have a strategy where they're trying to move you so you will get the ball back, but then it creates a better shot for them, that's when we start running into trouble. So no man's land can serve you at the beginning, but at some point it's going to start working against you, and we need to start working on transitioning from point A to point B, right? Which is the no volley zone. So the question you have to ask yourself, are you playing a game of survival? Are you playing the best position possible? Okay, so let me clarify. The number one goal is to win the rally. Number two goal is, where am I going to do that from? Where is the best place for me to win the rally? At the very beginning, it might be here, but at some point as your game gets better, it's going to be from the no volley zone. Okay, that's going to give you the best position possible to start winning more rallies. Now then, obviously there's all the other nuances, the shots that you hit, the strategy that you are able to execute, along with some of the shots to create that strategy that you have to execute. And those are all skills, those are all things you want to learn. But if we're talking about best possible position, we want to start working on the transition zone, getting from point A to point B, and spending less time in the no man's land. Okay, so again, I either refer to it as a transition zone or I refer to it as no man's land, depending on how you're playing the game on the court. With the understanding that at some point I am going to really encourage you to start playing more of the transition zone game and get away from less of the no man's land. Or another way to say it, I'm going to get you away from a game of survival and get you to a better game that gives you the best possible position to win each rally. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. Again, my name is Thomas Jellowise with Night Train Pickleball. If you like this video, please like. If you want to, please like it. If you want to keep up with our Whiteboard Wednesdays or our Mindset Mondays, please hit the subscribe button, turn on the notifications. Every time we post, you will get notified, and you'll be able to either catch us live or catch the replay once it goes up. Along with that, we do have the drilling guide still. So it's the free drilling guide that I made so you can start keeping up and documenting your drills each week and watching yourself progress. You can look back 3 months from now and go, hey, this is where my game was. This is what I did for drilling. And now look at where my game is. It's an awesome thing. I use it. That's how I keep up and how I progress my game is I keep up with my drilling each week. And it's a great little tool to have. It's free. It'll be down in the description below. So if you would like to see a video, please feel free to leave it in the comments what video you would like us to do on the whiteboard. Break it down, what part of the game. And we would love to do that for you. We even tag you in it so you know that it's up. Okay? So again, Tom Shellwise, Nitro and Pickleball. We'll see you in the next Whiteboard Wednesday.